This is Dr. Charles Parker, and you're listening to Core Brain Journal. It's a place where I connect both fresh discoveries and interesting different perspectives from advanced mind science with the realities of real people and everyday life down on Main Street. Well, welcome, folks. Dr. Charles Parker here at Core Brain Journal, and today we have another interesting guest, and this is going to be kind of on the client side, even though this young man is relatively new to neuroscience. He is an informed individual, and he's on the recipient end. He's had some people train him. He's had a learning process. He's kind of on the client end, if you will. We talk about the neuroscience professionals, and he's a budding neuroscience professional, relative newbie. And so we're going to welcome Joe Hensley. Thanks for joining us, Joe. It's Joe.
Thanks for having me.
I'm sorry I said Joe. It's Joel Hensley.
Joel, yeah.
I apologize. I was zooming along, introducing you. So the thing about it is, Joel, one of the things I thought was very interesting in looking at your background and your experiences, I think one of the things that's really interesting for our audience is what happens with a person kind of right off the street. Now, you're not right off the street. You're not completely innocent in this whole thing. You know, you have some experience, you have some training, you certainly have some curiosity. But what we're going to do is tease apart who you are as a person. And then one of the things you're interested in is Qualia, a product with Neurohacker. And we're just going to chase down what that has meant for you in your recovery and your own self-discovery, which is of interest. And we're going to, chase that down. So let me give you a little bit of introduction. Joel is from Burlington, Kentucky, and near Cincinnati, Ohio. He's a clinical nutrition, health coach, fitness coach, and he had just fortuitously run an adrenal panel on himself. He's going to talk more about that in a second, and discovered that he had a real adrenal exhaustion. He confirmed his suspicion that adrenal insufficiency was real. And I'll tell you, even adrenal insufficiency, I can tell you, folks, is considered controversial, oddly enough. But so he had foggy mind, no ability to concentrate. He couldn't drive. He had no mental stamina, no push. I think he was probably driving the car, but he had no push. He had to deal with seasonal affective disorder, depression, anxiety, and anger. And then he began this protocol. So let's run the tape all the way back. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Joel, how you got interested, what was going on, and then how you wound up doing the testing, the company. Let's get a little background so a person like you, right on the street, can appreciate what's going on. So tell us about that, please.
Sure, yeah. So, I've been going through quite a bit, actually, from 2013 on up to, even now starting a brand new business pretty much on my own. But, I started to notice I was really losing my edge probably towards the end of 2015. Whereas I was getting up in the morning, energetic, clear-minded. I was able to function, as we would assume a normal human being would function, working out 4 or 5 days a week, and just never really had an issue with getting up and going and having that motivation to do, what was necessary in the day. And then towards the end of 2015 hit, and I just noticed I hit a wall. And it was
you hit a wall. You hit a wall. Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
And when you say that, it was a physical wall, an energy wall, right?
It was a physical wall, but it was a mental wall. Okay. Where I had the drive before, the drive just was not there. Mm-hmm. Perfect example. I'd get up at 7, and by like 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, I was ready for a nap. And that had never been the case for me before. So where I knew I had to get things done, I just didn't care enough about them to get them done. The nap was priority one, and that's what set me off to know something's not right. And fast forward just a little bit, working on a certification that I hold now, and an integral part of that was understanding adrenal function and dysfunction, and why it happens and how to fix it. And so, as you said, fortuitously, it was very much that. I had the ability to run the test myself for very, very low cost and to take a look and, get inside and see what was really going on with my adrenal function. HPA axis turns out it was completely out of whack. And so I started working on that, and it took a while. It was definitely a process.
Now, before we get into working on it, let me take a moment because
Sure.
I know people are wondering how that testing was. There are lots of different tests, and they are going to be wondering, and any innocent person who's wondering about this thing, there are a lot of people out there that have major energy crunches that just can't function. So was it a saliva test? Was it a urine test? Was it a blood test? What was that test? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so we'll focus on the adrenal part. The adrenal test was a saliva test. It was 8 a.m., 12 p.m., 4 p.m., and about 10 p.m. So in each of those times, I would give a specimen, and after that point, it would send off to the lab. So I don't really love the idea of a single blood test to get a cortisol sum. A cortisol sum means one thing, but a pattern means something very different. And from what I can tell, a lot of the cortisol urine is I don't want to say it's let's just say obsolete from everything I've read, and it seemed to be the saliva was the gold standard. And I was actually glad to find out that what I was learning to interpret. And so, you get that back. When you get it back, it's got it plotted out on the sheet of paper. It's got it in number form, but it's also got it in graph form from morning to night, what your cortisol level is at that given time of the day versus what it should be. Is it too high? Is it too low? And there are other indications based off of what time of day and at what level, it's at. And gives you an indication as to what probably is going on.
Okay, stop right there, because people may not know what cortisol is. They may not know what the adrenal gland is. They wouldn't know its relationship with what your chief complaint was. Let's take a moment to put all that together.
Okay. Yeah, so, cortisol, that's one of the major, it's known as the stress hormone, aptly named, essentially because it's produced in higher amounts of, we're stressed out. Our nervous system perceives stress, communicates with the endocrine system, which is essentially just all the organs that produce their respective hormones. And it's a lot of hormone play. So cortisol being the stress hormone, when it's low, you're going to feel what I was feeling. So not able to wake up in the morning. You're going to have low energy throughout the day. Definitely have brain fog. That's another hallmark symptom. My workouts definitely suffered. And what I mean by that is fat loss had stalled. I was actually trying to lean out at the time. My strength gains were non-existent. And so I think cortisol is a super important hormone just for basic health. And so when it's either too high or too low, it needs to be fixed. And so can I clarify a little bit?
One thing I'm going to add to it is because people may not know that those adrenal glands are kind of like the thyroid gland, but they're different. It's a different hormone, of course, and they sit right on top of the kidneys. So they're the fight, fight. When you're under stress and you got to do something to survive, they're kind of your survival glands. Some kind of terrible tragedy hits you, just crank up and explode. And when somebody, it's like the guy who's, the tree fell in the car and his wife was in the car and he lifted the tree up and took it off the car. That's a function of a rapidly processing adrenal gland because the strength and all that push of energy and force comes from those adrenal glands. And what you do is when you get into, there's a HPA axis, is there are a series of glands that are connected with each other. The bottom line, A, is the adrenal. So what happens, these different glands are talking to each other. If your adrenal gland is not functioning well, you suffer from adrenal fatigue. That's where this is where Joel then had the light bulb go off, and this is why he decided, and you can test it, as Joel said, with saliva. We've been doing this for a long period of time. I'm so glad we have a guy on like you to talk about it because honestly, in the entire 100, more than 100 podcasts we've had, nobody has talked about adrenal function and its relevance to daily life. And we see so many people that get missed because they think of it as a psychiatric problem, like I'm out of energy because I'm depressed. And yeah, that's part of it. But then adrenal fatigue is another real problem that is treatable if you measure it. So you got the measurement and you looked at it. Now, what did your line look like on that adrenal fatigue? Morning, noon, afternoon, and 10 p.m. What did that line look like on your graph?
Yeah, so my morning was under the minimum. Okay, so when I say minimum, we're talking the reference range of lowest to highest. That is what they consider at that lab to be normal. Mm-hmm. It was under the low. Yep. Okay, so if we put it into number, it would probably, I think the range was like 12 to 18 in the morning. I think mine was, 16 to 24 was the range. Mine was like 12 in the morning. Mm-hmm. Noontime it popped back up in range, but low in range. So it was just barely back in where it was supposed to be. Probably could have been a little bit higher to be, at best. Mm-hmm. By afternoon, it had dropped back down into that low range again. And this time it did like a nosedive drop. Yeah. And so by, evening time, nighttime again, it had come back up almost into range. I think the lowest for that in range is like a 3. I think I had like a 3.1. Wow. And so, that's really debatable. So it was bad. It was really bad. Another way that they'll look at it is, especially too in blood tests, if they're just taking one specimen and trying to give you a 24-hour total, they'll look at what's called a cortisol sum. And they're taking a sum of different portions of the day, adding that up and seeing whether or not you're in range. Mm-hmm. And I was actually not even in range on the low end of the reference range, let alone, mid-range for what they consider optimal. So I was suffering big time, way, way, way too low. I want to say of the 24 to 42 is the reference range for normal for that cortisol sum, mm-hmm. where they add them all up. I was like a 22. So even if I had taken a blood test and just looked at it that way, they still probably would have caught that.
All right, let's freeze frame this conversation for just a second, because now I got my medical curiosity up with you, Joel. I don't know you. We haven't talked about this, but now I'm going to put my medical hat on and say, did you have at the time any suspicions about why your adrenal gland functioning was indeed compromised?
Oh, absolutely, no question.
What was that?
So in 2013. And that's why I'm going to say that all this starts, because honestly, my life was pretty peachy before then. I wouldn't have said that in 2012, but when 2013 hit, stuff hit the fan. So I sustained I called it a ghost injury, because I had been to 7 different doctors. I had a scope done, had numerous different doctors look at me, palpate, press, and push and pull, and they couldn't figure it out. And the area of the body, it was right in the middle of my, let's say the inner thigh muscle where it connects to the pelvis. Yep. That's where I was getting extreme pain. It was radiating out in every direction. So I had some personal training clients at the time. I was doing a lot of fitness coaching. Lost my clients. I think I had one left that was willing to work with the crazy schedule, because I could barely ambulate. Ended up back with my parents at home on the couch, no business to speak of. And for 9 months, I was looking for an answer for this, not getting any answers from, the traditional medical doctors who were looking at it in a traditional way. All right, let me ask you real quickly. You said scope. A lot of people don't know what the scope was. That a proctosigmoidoscope? Was it what kind of scope were you talking about? They just went in right below my belly button. They actually. Go ahead. They were looking at my lower abdominal wall for a hernia. So I don't know. I'm not sure on the terminology if that's laparoscopy. Yep. Okay, so that's what they did. It wasn't anything super invasive, but it was probably more than I really ended up needing. Long story short, I healed up, but at the time, I kind of lost my whole lifestyle. Definitely lost my income, lost my standing in the business and what I did. And so I was starting from square one. In some ways that was good. In a lot of ways, it was very stressful to have such, uncertainty, and it came out of nowhere because
I was going to ask you now, did you have stress? Did you have a traumatic event? Was it a mental thing, or you just out of the blue just lost your energy?
So, what happened here when I'm talking in 2013, I had an actual physical injury that, again, went undiagnosed, but everything that I looked at indicated to me that it was osteitis pubis. So that pelvic cartilage right in the front where it flexes and bends, as best as I can tell from every single symptom that I had, that cartilage had been torn, and it's likely it was getting tension from one of the inner thigh muscles that connected near that. And so this was something very physical. I think I did it when I was squatting, but it didn't happen immediately. This was like 4 days after the last time I'd worked out.
I got you.
So added mystery to the equation. To fast forward a little bit and continue to answer your question on, how was I stressed out?
Yep.
Went through pretty traumatic thing with, I was in a relationship for like 7 years, really kind of thought we were going to end up getting married. That didn't happen. Just like the injury did 2 years prior, one day we were, hanging out and everything just kind of, we had that conversation and that was done with. And so that came out of the blue, and that was a big hit too. And I was still kind of recovering in terms of business, trying to figure out what direction I really needed to go, what my purpose was. I knew what I was passionate about, but, passion leaves us. It's an emotion. And I was really still trying to figure out what the purpose of me having an interest in helping other people acquire better health was. And so that was a struggle. That was an emotional struggle daily. And so, putting those two things together at this point, now we're, it's early 2016, and this time last year, I opened the business, and, I don't have kids of my own, and so maybe some people will disagree, but I can liken it to having a new kid because you can't ever put it down. It doesn't go away. You get up, you don't get to go on a vacation from it. I don't have to change diapers, but I do have to put out fires that typically get started, and I don't know until they're big enough that I have to drop everything else and put them out. So, now here we are 2017. I've been dealing with that for 10 months or so, and I have to say it's probably the single most rewarding decision I made to jump and start a business, to get a physical place of my own, as opposed to, working out from under other people and, following the beat of their drum. Because that's really not what I don't think that I'm really built for doing. I have too many of my own ideas, and now I'm actually able to put them in practice, but I'm leveraging that with the level of stress that I have with a new business.
So then let's go back to the findings. So you discovered these things, and the big question that's on everybody's mind is, what the heck did you do about it once you discovered that your adrenal was off? Now, did the adrenal findings tell you about your DHEA as well? Did you do anything else with like testosterone or any other hormones? Tell us a little more about that big picture.
Yeah. So when I got my results back, figured out that I was basically my hormones were inverted. And what that means is this: when you have your cortisol and you have your DHEA, and those are the only two that you're looking at, typically, more often, somebody who has a really low cortisol score is also going to have a pretty low DHEA score. They tend to coincide like that.
Yes.
Some people aren't that way. They're outliers. Some people still retain a high DHEA level, which is, as best as I can tell, is still good, because perhaps you can retain some sex hormone function. That was the case for me. It was still pretty high. And so I had a little bit of that to work off of. But, to answer your question, what did I do about the low cortisol? How did I get that back up? I did several different things. I had to figure out, first of all, I've always been keen on food. Even when I couldn't work out, I could maintain a low body fat percentage because I'm very specific about the foods that I eat and how I eat and all of that. So the diet was one thing to keep things on board. I was really watching my sugar, keeping my sugar intake low. My rest levels, my rest was bad in terms of quality. Okay. So, up until this point, I was routinely staying up until anywhere from 1 till 3:30 in the morning. just stressed out. My mind was going. By nature, I'm a fairly introverted person, and so my mind's going, twice as much as my mouth is not. And so that was a real stressor anyway, because I want to sleep, and then you get 3 hours of sleep and you have to go for the next day and you don't have a choice. So I was starting to work on that. My exercise levels, I pretty much quit exercising. I did some basic stretching. I didn't really try to do a whole lot. I had no goals other than to, basically restore adrenal function. And I knew that every time that I was going into the gym, whether it was doing light cardio or light weights or, a quick intense workout of even like 10 minutes, I would leave the gym and I would have to take a nap, as soon as I got home. It wasn't a matter of, oh, yes, I could take a nap. It was like, if I'm going to get through the rest of the day, I have to lay down for at least an hour. And so I quit working out. Again, it was basic stretching, some very, very light stuff, maybe some planks or maybe some body weight squats or something like that, but just enough to get some blood flowing. And that was literally it. And a lot of people that I've talked to just, in my business, they look at me like I've got three heads when I tell them to stop exercising because of what their cortisol patterns are looking like. And not everybody needs to do that, but I did. Mm-hmm. And that definitely helped me. One of the other issues that I had to address was how I was dealing with stress. I found out I was really, really bad at internalizing stress. I like to say before this period of time that I didn't compartmentalize things, that I would address it and, get it taken care of and move on. But in reality, that's not really what I was doing. I was compartmentalizing things too much, and I was internalizing too much stress, and so it was just festering. And so somebody who thinks deeply about things, that's not a good recipe for balance.
You were getting more and more. You were getting more and more disconnected from everything.
Absolutely.
From yourself, from other people, from your work. You were just slowly going downhill. And you're a young guy. So how old are you?
I'm 32 now. I was probably 29 when I really started dealing with this stuff.
Obviously a young guy. And we see this, listeners, we see this all the time in our offices. This is not an uncommon finding because so many of these people are actually treatment failures with psychiatry. And people are throwing different kinds of medications, including stimulants and ADHD medications in people that have these adrenal. Why? Because the person does feel better with a stimulant medication. And yet it's a never-ending thing because they need more and more stimulants to just make it through the day, which is completely counterproductive because that's not the way you treat adrenal fatigue. I mean, you're not treating the problem, you're treating the symptoms, and it doesn't go anywhere. So, okay, so then what did you do for supplements? How did you get yourself into a treatment regimen, and what did you do with that whole situation?
So the supplement part for me was fairly easy because I just had some extensive education on specifically what to do based off of the numbers. Now, I will say this. I learned early on in that program not to treat the test numbers. So the test score is one thing, but the human aspect was another part of it. However, I was pretty versed in using the right herbs. So I'll just kind of name off and tell you what I did. I took licorice root. Okay.
Yep.
It's not the deglycerized, not the DGL. It's just regular licorice root. I took that in capsules. For a little bit, I took, there's some that I had extracted. It's just an alcohol extraction of the raw root. And I did that, but I didn't do that for long. That was just a stand-in until I got what I needed. So licorice root was really the base of the protocol for what it does with cortisol. It can essentially, there's a compound in it that will inhibit the breakdown of cortisol. So it doesn't allow the cortisol in your body to be broken down. And just put into really simple terms, that's a good thing in my situation because my body was trying to produce cortisol at certain levels all day. And by virtue of that cortisol being there, my adrenals could, I guess you could say, they relaxed a little bit. And so not so much was expected of them in terms of how much cortisol is available, how much cortisol is in the blood. So licorice did that for me. Mm-hmm. probably the second most important thing that I did was I took adrenal glandulars. I know that not everybody is a proponent of those. I've heard good and bad things, but if I'm just speaking off of personal experience and experience I've had with my clients so far, they've been only good. One thing that I don't do myself and would not do with a client is to keep them on them for extended periods of time, meaning if you still need them after 3 or 4 months, I may look into another route, or at least factoring something else in and cycling some things.
Right.
But for me personally, I was probably 12 weeks or so on an adrenal glandular. I took, it was from kiwi, like the kiwi bird. Mm-hmm. And that brand seems to be, I can tell definitely better results from that brand than any other brand. Most brands will use porcine or bovine cows or pig glandulars. I don't know what it is, if there's anything special about the kiwi bird itself, or if it's just the pristine state that they can keep it in their product. But that particular supplement was really good in combination with the licorice. And then
Kiwi is the brand name. Was that right? Kiwi is the brand name.
So PHP, Professional Health Products, is actually that's the brand name of the product I took. But they get all of their glandulars, at least adrenal glandulars, from the kiwi bird.
They do.
And again, I don't know why they do that.
Yeah.
But it's just the only brand that
I didn't know there were enough kiwi birds around to supply glandulars. That's very
right.
I've never seen one. Yeah, they're not in my backyard.
No, not mine either.
Sorry, interrupt. That was a point of clarification.
Also a huge proponent of adaptogenic herbs, and I use them pretty liberally. So the two that I love the most, this is just for me, although I have seen, again, with a lot of clients, they seem to gravitate towards them after they take them for just a matter of days, is holy basil and rhodiola rosea. Mm-hmm. So pretty liberal with both of those. For some people, rhodiola is not the best because it can help to produce serotonin pretty efficiently. Sometimes it gets people kind of too, I don't say drowsy, but kind of too chill, too laid back, putting them too much in that parasympathetic state. However, again, I've only seen that with one person of several that I've worked with, given this to them. So my personal protocol was that. I also took some vitamin C, precursor for stress hormones and adrenal support, and then B5, B6. I could tell a difference probably for a week or so. I tend to still, and this is just a bad habit from my early 20s, when I like to neglect a lot of the micronutrients. I just figure out their B vitamins, how important can they be. I probably quit taking those for about a week when I was doing this whole protocol, and I could tell such a huge difference that when I put them back in, it's like everything came back online. So in my experience, those B5 and B6 for adrenal support, precursors to for dopamine production, are huge, and I don't think they should be neglected. I think a lot of people neglect vitamins and minerals in general. If we're talking to the general public, and they need to take a special interest in those, because sometimes those are the nutrients that will turn off or on an entire program.
Absolutely. And
so they need to be respected for that, not just because they seem like they're ubiquitous. The proper forms are not. So that pretty much wraps up what I did in terms of supplementation. I tried a couple other things in the process, but ashwagandha is another adaptogenic herb that I think probably added a little bit to the program, but it wasn't a make or break. So I actually didn't continue to take that.
So then somewhere along the way, you came across Neurohacker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this was probably, so that whole program I just kind of laid out, doing that for probably, let's say 3 months. I'm going to say a good solid 3 months before I came across Neurohacker. And it was probably another 2 to 3 weeks before I said, okay, I'm going to take a look at this product for, just take it at face value. I didn't even look at the ingredient list at this point, and when I took that second look, I'm like, let's see what it's all about. And one of the things that I was really sensitive about was any kind of a stimulant, for obvious reasons at this point. Everybody's favorite stimulant is caffeine. And if you look at very much research at all, it's pretty easy to see what caffeine can do to adrenal function if it's overused. And so one of the first things that I saw in it was, oh, shoot, well, it's got caffeine in it. And, I almost wrote it off and, talking about people being on Facebook and kind of looking at it and, having their own ideas about it before even trying it out for a single day.
Now, you're talking about the product that Neurohacker makes right now.
Yeah, so Qualia is
Qualia.
The two steps. Yes.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry.
Step
go ahead.
1, step 2. Step 1 is where the caffeine is. And when I looked at that, I kind of looked over and I saw 209 milligrams. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like 2 like pretty strong cups of coffee like in a pill. So that's like all at once. I'm like, there's no way. Like, I want to get this and try this so bad, but I mean, who knows? Like one full dose of that could set me off again for, a few. I had no idea. I was probably being overly cautious, but I'd been through so much at that point, and I worked so hard to start to feel better that it's like I almost didn't want to take the chance. And then, in reality, it's not 209 milligrams. It's like 90 milligrams of caffeine, and they actually had put this in parentheses. So there's a compound. Looks like it's trademarked within their product. It's another product called Pure Energy. And it's 90 milligrams of caffeine and 119 milligrams of TerraPure, which is TerraStilbene co-crystal. That's exactly what it says on their label. I had never heard of the TerraStilbene before, so I wasn't really sure what that did. And looking at it a little bit further, again, just putting in basic terms, it seemed like it was like a time release situation because it looks like it's been bound to caffeine. Mm-hmm. And so I'm looking at this, take a second look at this supplement label, and I'm like, okay, so it's not, over 200 milligrams of caffeine. It's 90, and it looks like it might not hit me all at once. And so I'm like, okay, I'll try it. The way that they have it dosed, you're taking multiple pills of, you've got a step 1 and a step 2. And so you don't have to take, it's not just like a pill or, a bunch of pills that you have to take all at once. This another thing I like. It's a feature that probably sold me on it because I knew that I didn't have to take all of it at once. And so I went ahead and got it. I just kind of decided to try it out. Again, like I mentioned before, get a money-back guarantee, so I had nothing to lose. And so I got it in a few days later, and when I tried it, I decided, okay, on the step 1, a full dose is this. Let me back up and say this. The step 1, a full dose is 3 capsules of what's in the bottle. And then the step 2 is 6 capsules of that bottle. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to do a full dose right away for purposes of, I don't want to take so much caffeine. So I'm going to do a third of a dose. So I took a third of a dose. And even that day, the amount of focus and leverage I felt like I had with my own energy levels that I had worked to kind of, retrieve. I felt like it helped me to make the most of that. And I didn't at any point feel jittery or overstimulated or nervous or anxious. And all of those were things that I felt prior to the supplement program, with the licorice and with the adrenal, the glandular adrenals and with the herbs that I took. Prior to that, those were all things that I had, felt anyway. If something set me off, I would be overstimulated. I would be jittery. I would get really tired feeling. And so even now, 3 months later, I took a third of the dose of the Qualia. I didn't feel that way. So I thought, okay, well, it is only 30 milligrams of caffeine, but that's not saying enough about it. The amount of focus that I had, the amount of memory, the retention I had with stuff. I was recalling stuff that I had tried to learn 6 months prior, and I forgot that I sat down and tried to learn it, and I was recalling these things. And so I thought that was pretty, tremendous in and of itself, and I thought, okay, well, so this is definitely going to be a good tool for me in terms of, ongoing education. Mm-hmm. So, fast forward, I stuck with that third of a dose for a couple of days. I didn't get too excited about it because, sometimes things you take it and you have that immediate effect, and then it wears off, and then,
Yeah,
you know,
they don't work out. Yeah.
Right. So after, let's say 2-3 days, I went ahead, I did 2/3 the dose. And as you might imagine, it doubled the effect. And I could, as best, you know, I can't really quantify that, but in terms of my perception, it was definitely quite a bit more. And I'm thinking still not the full dose. And it's like, I'm a big fan of like speed reading, because I after I took a speed reading test, I realized how abominably slow I read because I pronounced everything like a kindergartner. And so I've been really trying to work on speed and retention so that I could, you know, understand more quicker, get more things done in school and just in self-education. And so I actually noticed that the first day that I took the 2/3 dose, I was reading faster, I was retaining more, and I'm like, you know, is this like placebo? Am I just like trying harder? You know, but that continued, and then that still continues. And so after about a week or so, I decided, okay, let's do the full dose. And I mean, honestly, it's like for me, it was like rocket fuel because not only for over a year and a half had I not felt normal, like I found that new normal, which is in complete deficit of the way that I should have been functioning. And so to go from that 3 months prior to start feeling better from what I did to just nourish my adrenals and my entire HPA system, and then taking this right on top of it, it was like I felt normal again. I felt like it actually functioned again. And so
you felt. Let me interrupt you for just a second. So you felt better in a much more forgive the expression, totalitarian way. You were like everything was working. So you'd spent the time with the licorice and these other adrenal supportive thing, ashwagandha and all those, and you had felt somewhat better. But then this just put the frosting on the cake. So you really, and probably a bad metaphor to use when we're talking about nutrition, but you bottom line is you felt one heck of a lot better, but you didn't go out the top. You felt like a regular person again, which is the way you felt before you started deteriorating several years prior.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it was. You know, when I got up in the morning, and this is me personally. Again, if I wake up in the morning and I don't feel like that, I have like this. There's not a whole lot of zeal in the morning. There doesn't tend to be a lot of production in the daytime, and with this stuff, I woke up and I actually couldn't wait to get to work. You know, whether it was with a client, whether it was, you know, studying or whatever, you know, whatever project that I'm working on at the time, taking this, I get up in the morning, you know, within 30 minutes, I've already taken that step one, and I can explain kind of how it works here in just a second if you like. But, you know, I took the first step and then take the second step within probably 30 minutes with my breakfast. And it's like, I'm ready to go for the day. But what's interesting is this. I can take it one day, you know, and I have that effect. And then the next morning I'll get up, I'll not take it. And I'm probably, I'd say 90% of what I was the day before without even taking it. So there's a definite like bleed over effect into the next day. And I haven't dug really deep into every single ingredient, although I'm familiar with a lot of them. I don't know if there's something specific in it that just has that carryover, or if their mission for that, you know, for that neurological upgrade is actually taking place, and that's, you know, that's the evidence of that. But I like it because it's not the cheapest product, and anybody who's going to take a look at purchasing is quickly going to find that out. But where supplements are concerned, I find that it's not generally true that you get what you pay for. But this is, and in fact, maybe even more so because of your off days. When you're taking it as it's supposed to be taken, you're going to have that bleed over effect into the next day. And so it's not necessarily a 5-day on, 2-day off regimen. And all the more that it carries such high value because of that.
Well, let's ask for a point of clarification on that. So how does Qualia, for the Neurohacker product, how is it supposed to be taken when you're taking it routinely?
Okay, so criteria is this. Don't take it and expect a whole lot if you're deficient in sleep. If you've got really, you know, crappy sleep, you stayed up drinking the night before, don't even waste the pills. But really, the person should be a little bit more focused on that if they're going to spend the money, and if they've got aspirations that include Qualia, then get a decent night's rest. Take it in the morning. Step one is to be taken on an empty stomach. Compounds in step one need that kind of that free pathway. They don't need competition with food. 30 to 45 minutes later, you're going to have a meal with a reasonable amount of fat in it. So that's if you're doing like a no fat diet, probably don't want to do this. Otherwise, I take, if it's 8 to 10 grams of fat, I notice the maximal effect. I don't think you need like a ton of fat in it, but you need a certain amount because you need lipase enzymes to be able to break certain things down in here for increased absorption. I should say maximal absorption because I think some of it will be absorbed anyway. But
okay,
that's
stop right
idea.
there. So how do you get your fat?
Mm-hmm.
Do you do what Dave Asprey talks about in Bulletproof? Do you do butter? Do you do some of his medium chain triglycerides? What do you actually do?
So I don't actually drink coffee currently. So I don't do the bulletproof coffee. I will use butter from time to time. I typically cook with coconut oil. And one of my staple breakfast foods is eggs with yolks, and so there's the yolks there. Occasionally, I'll use. I'm not a vegan, but I actually like vegan protein better. It's easier on my stomach, and so I'll have a vegan protein shake. Thorn Research is right now. It's kind of my favorite trending brand, and then I'll put probably a serving of pecans or walnuts in that, and that does the trick.
Yeah, what's the term? I said medium chain triglycerides. I don't think that's the term. I think it's medium chain. What's the phrase there?
Well, I think he always refers to it just as MCT oil.
MCT. So he does. So it's and then I am remembering it correctly. Okay. Yeah. So then, because it's in coconut oil, and what happens is then refresh us on how much do you take, like a teaspoon of coconut oil? What's the amount that you need to take to get around 5 grams?
A little bit less than half of a tablespoon, because a tablespoon is 14 grams of fat, and it's just pure fat. So 1 tablespoon is 14 grams. So you could probably take about a third of a tablespoon if you're just looking for like 5 grams of fat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so not much.
And that makes a difference. And that whole thing then turns over for you. I'm looking at our time. I'm enjoying this conversation, but I know we got to wind up here. But so you do that, and then let's talk about your maintenance dose, and then bring this to a close. What's your maintenance dose, and then what's your recommendation to people do regarding after they get some testing, if they find themselves having some adrenal compromise? So talk about that in a minute after you tell us what your maintenance is.
Yeah, so right now what I'm actually doing with Qualia is I'm just taking the third dose, and I'll do it every other day. So that's not very much at all, but I find it's enough for me to keep the mental edge. I can do a 16-hour day that's pretty heavy mental load. Occasionally, what I'll do, I think I actually did I did 2/3 of a dose today, just because I hadn't been taken very much lately, and I did have quite a bit to get done today. So a third of a dose every other day, and on a week's basis, that ends up to be like a sixth of a dose, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. But I will also occasionally go ahead and do a 2/3 or a full dose, just kind of out of the blue if I know I've got a lot to do. So that way, on those really hectic days, those higher doses, I feel like serve me a little bit more than just taking the full dose all the time. Because what they recommend is, you can take it for 5 days consecutively, but then you need 2 days off, or you could take it, whatever you want it to look like in your schedule, as long as it's 2 days of a 7-day week that you're not.
So you don't take it every day is the bottom line. You take, and they're looking at a consistent break from the dosage pattern, and then you can spread it out in an effective way for yourself, is what you're saying.
Definitely. Yep. Yeah. And, I feel like, it's going to go longer that way. I feel like, I'm never going to get tempted to be like, okay, well, maybe what if I took a double dose? What would that do? Because I'm the kind of person that would do that. But honestly, it's such a powerful supplement, and I mean, it sounds hokey to say, but it's like it might actually upgrade your IQ enough just so you don't waste stuff. Because
you're smart enough not to be stupid.
yeah. I took Siltep, and I think I was taking like triple and quadruple the dose for in a short period of time from the time that I got it, and still wasn't noticing a whole lot.
Now, what was that? What was that product you just mentioned?
Siltep.
Okay.
Siltep, and I heard of that through Dave Asprey as well. I don't know if that's one of his products. I know he sells it, and that's where I bought it from, his website.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, so that's kind of how I use it. That's how I think it's probably best used. I think everybody should try dosing it, according to what they want or need. But ultimately, I think they'll find that when they back off a little bit, it still serves the purpose very, very well.
Well, that is fantastic. I mean, it's fun talking to you, Joel. We do have to wind up. I'm sure we've taken people down the road. They've already arrived at work, and they really have tried to figure out what to do. And I know you have an email here, and I know you have a phone number. I'm not going to publish that. It's because, the issue is you wouldn't want crank mail. Do you have a website that you would send people to, or do you have a Facebook page? How would you like people to connect with you if they wanted to be a client?
Yeah, so website is cywellness.com.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And if you just looked up Catalyst Wellness Solutions on Facebook, just in the search bar, then that should be the first one to come up.
All right, that's great. Listen, I'm going to ask you to make sure you send those to me because I want to make sure I get them in the show notes and have them spelled out rather than ask for points of clarification while everybody's here. So we'll have those in the show notes, folks, but the CY Wellness, that's easy enough. And then we'll get the other Facebook page and we'll get that in there. And I want to thank you very much, Joel, for coming on because, we just walked down a path with you from being down there with your face on the pavement to figuring out what's going on, doing some significant testing, and addressing it very directly, addressing it in a way that didn't work, and then addressing it in a way that actually did work. And I think when we listen to, the podcast 084 by Daniel Schmachtenberger, he's a very impressive guy. And I think Neurohacker has some very interesting, specific ways that they can help individuals out, even more than energy. But energy is a very, very big one for so many people. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Dr. Parker. Appreciate it.
So we will have you back sometime once you're doing this even further down the road. Be a lot of fun to talk more.
Definitely. I appreciate that very much.
Thanks for listening to Core Brain Journal. We're working every day behind the scenes to bring you reports that connect research benches with those street trenches. Here we share the complexity of mind science because, as you know, details really do matter. One of the most pervasive, misunderstood challenges is how commonplace medications, like those written for ADHD, are used so regularly without clear guidelines. If you think you'd like more specifics, take a minute to download my 2-page PDF packed with video links and references on the absolute essentials of how to start ADHD medications. They're easily available at corebrainjournal.com/start. Thanks for listening. Do connect and stay tuned. Together we can make a difference.